Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Collier. I am the Executive Director of Renew Theaters, which manages the Ambler Theater. And I'm very happy to have you joining us tonight for this special community conversation about the film John Lewis Good Trouble. We are so thankful to a couple members of the Ambler branch of the NAACP who have put this event together and are joining us here for this conversation. I'd like to turn everything over now to Stephanie Leonard, who's the membership chair, who really put all this together, and she can speak more about how we're going to proceed. Just as I turn things over, please put any questions or comments you have into the comment chat on YouTube, and we will share those with our panelists. Stephanie?
Thank you, Chris. And thank you, Ambler Theater, for allowing us to have this dialogue and discussion, which just so happens to fall approximately a month from our election, which is something that I feel like John Lewis really strived for with respect to African Americans and making sure that we actually had a vote to be heard. The movie John Lewis Good Trouble, I found it was informative. I found it was emotional, and it had the ability to really show the strength and the drive that he had and willing to work with respect to civil rights and with respect to government. And with that, I would like to introduce you to Leroy Hall. He is the educational chair of the Ambler branch NAACP. Both he and I will be bringing the knowledge that we have to inform, to question, to chat about events past and present with respect to justice and equality in America. And it just so happens that I think we are in trying times right now. That's my opinion. And this is all falling pretty much at a good time right now. So, Leroy, could you please just give the audience a little background about yourself?
Yes. Thank you for having me. I'm excited. It's like everyone else that's joining us today. I'm extremely motivated by the life and the actions taken by John Lewis. And I think the action word is the most operative word in that statement, because he was about action, not just about talking. He did both. And for me, my background is I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, pretty much lifelong educator, taught math for 8 years in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania at a charter school. Then my wife is from Philadelphia. So we moved to Philadelphia. I am now in my 7th year as a school principal for the school district of Philadelphia. I also teach, teach a class on leadership and change, a master's level class at Chestnut Hill College. So I just really feel invested in just leadership and change and just making sure that we mobilize our community and make sure that our students and our children are educated. And that history is brought to all students, regardless of their background.
And I'd just like to say also, just to sort of piggyback on something that you were saying with respect to change and action, we've recently had some things take place in the U.S. with respect to, George Floyd, and several others who unfortunately met an early demise. And so all these things really have kind of fell upon us. And again, with the movie coming out, it just seems like a really good time to be able to have these conversations, to have them, whether we're talking about what took place in the 60s or what's taking place now. It's all seems very relevant to me.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So if we can go ahead and get questions going, that would be great.
So we don't have any yet, but I would encourage anyone who's watching, if you have any questions or comments or remarks that you wanted to share about the film, please add those into the live chat feed there, and I can share those with our two panelists. I can ask you both, though, as we're getting started, Obviously, John Lewis is a remarkable figure. Were there stories or moments in the documentary that stood out to each of you? New stories that you hadn't heard, or moments that stand above and beyond any stories that you had heard?
Ladies first.
Okay. So for me, my mom actually grew up in Arkansas. So Arkansas, actually Little Rock, was the place where they did integration with the Little Rock Nine. The Little Rock Nine were 9 high school students who were the first to integrate an all-white high school. When I saw the movie, it really made me think about my mom and when all of this was taking place and what she would tell us as kids, the fear, but the desire for these young Black kids to really want to be able to have a better education, and they were willing to cross lines to be able to get that. Violence, hate, but they were willing to do that. So this immediately made me reflect on the situation that my mom had when she, as I said, when she was in Little Rock.
Absolutely. And for me, I think one of the things that stuck out was early in the film, Representative Ayanna Pressley discussed what she described as the blueprint that John Lewis has laid out. And she said the John Lewis blueprint is to be organized, mobilized, and to legislate. And, later on in the movie, they really show evidence of that mobilization and of that organization when they even had the sit-in nonviolence training workshops, and just seeing how organized people were and how that was planned. And if you just look at pictures throughout history, you would think, oh, they just must have just walked in there and sat down. But no, there was a lot of strategy, there was a lot of structure, there was planning, and the people that put together the civil rights movement were very intelligent and very calculated. And I think that we, in this current environment, need to do the same and understand that that is what history has taught us, that we have to be organized and we have to make sure that we mobilize. And it's not going to be easy, and it's not something where we can just randomly walk outside. I mean, that works sometimes, of course, but there's some organization and some chess moves that need to be made. And I think that's important for us to keep that in mind as we move forward. Another part that really stuck out to me was there was a picture of John Lewis when he was in grade school. And I think it was 1951, 52. It said underneath the picture. And as an educator, I thought to myself, one of two things happened. Either he got the seed from somebody, or he saw enough tragedy and, injustice that the seed was just blossomed within him. But either way, the seed was either introduced to him and was kind of sown in him, or someone watered the seed that was kind of like self-grown. And I was just thinking, like, I wonder how many people, made John Lewis who John Lewis is. The educators in his life, the adults in his life, the role models, the neighbors, the, community members. And, that's the active role, as I educate children myself, that I would like to make sure I play. And I think our community can play. It's like planting those seeds in other students, because we don't know who the next John Lewis is, or Martin Luther King. Or many other phenomenal civil rights leaders, Fannie Lou Hamer. Mm-hmm. So, just planting that seed, and just kind of knowing that when you plant that seed, it will grow, and we're going to have to water it, though.
The interesting thing
I just wanted to share, we actually had some wonderful comments come through while you both were speaking. First was someone shared that her parents grew up in Fort Valley, Georgia, and didn't want to pick cotton anymore, so traveled north at a young age to have the opportunity to get an education and escape the sharecropper life.
Absolutely.
And someone else shared or asked if we could talk about his courage, John Lewis's courage, at a time when discrimination was the law of the land.
Yeah. So just to touch on the whole sharecropping scenario, when he mentions in the story in the movie that he used to ride on the sack in the cotton fields, and it's to me it sounded like they saw a spark in John Lewis, that his family didn't want him picking cotton all day, right? They knew he was bright enough. He was the one to go out and get the education. But it was funny because I do remember him saying something about riding on the cotton sack in the field, in the fields where, you know, his grandpa or whoever was picking cotton. And that's funny thing because that's something that my mom did as well. So it's just interesting to hear these stories that she told me years ago about what happens in the cotton fields. But anyway, but with respect to John, he definitely was, as Leroy was saying, the spark, and his I think it was seeing that he actually had a gift and he would be able to catapult into some really big things. But
Absolutely.
go ahead, Leroy.
Oh yeah, so I was just thinking along the lines of courage. I think there's some obvious things, which is standing, in front of the police, at the John Pettis Bridge, and just standing his ground. For him to be the frontline person, and he stayed so calm, hands still in his pockets, Bible still. I'm assuming that was a Bible on his side because they said he always walks around with his Bible, just to display that courage and be able to, still stand up for your values was just very honorable. And I think that's what we're seeing today. We're seeing people that are literally willing to risk their lives right after, the day after someone gets shot and killed, two people get shot and killed, there's more people out there. And I think that's a big point. And that's kind of one of the things that I was kind of saying, through conversations when some of these things are going on. When people decide enough is enough, there's nothing you can do to stop them, because there's there's not enough resources to stop them. So if you feel like, and I mean in a good way, meaning protesting in the proper way, but ultimately we've seen them try to kick up multiple police everywhere, blah blah blah. It's in one city, like, okay, you're going to bring the army to one city, that's fine, or soldiers to one city, but you can't bring them everywhere. So people need to realize that, I mean, you can, but I mean, that's a whole nother situation. So ultimately, and you're going to be spending millions and millions of dollars trying to keep that up. And how long are you going to keep that up for? Like, it's not going to happen. So the moral of the story is for him to set that example at that point. And then even with the freedom rides, when they said he was eating a meal and, they told him like, hey, you better enjoy this meal, this might be your last one. For him to still get on the bus, Representative Clyburn actually said his wife told him like, nah, you're not going, buddy. And like, he had to get off the bus, or he didn't even get on the bus, so that just shows you that even the people that had their hearts in it at that time, there still wasn't like an extra, like almost a video game boost of courage for a different group of people that was like, hey, we're just going, we don't know how this is going to end. But he just had faith that ultimately, like I said earlier, the seeds he was sowing, they were going to eventually blossom. And I think that kind of came into focus at the end when he was talking about Barack Obama.
I wanted to ask a question of you, Leroy, thinking about your role as a principal. Obviously, this movie captures the life of an incredible leader in civil rights and captures so much span of history. Mm-hmm. Do you think this is a movie that your students would watch? And how could you encourage them to engage with this film if not?
Oh, it's a great question. Yeah, absolutely. This is a film all of my students should watch. K to 12. I mean, well, I have K to 8, so I think it's an appropriate movie for K to 12. And I think the way that we would engage them is, first, I think it's most important to give kids some background knowledge. Just have them do some reading, have some group discussions, and then they can contextualize what they're about to see. And then when they see it, they're like, oh, that's John Lewis in action. That's them sitting at the counter. That's them, fighting for voting rights. And I think that, like I said, I think this history is beneficial for all Americans and all children. I think part of what happens in our society, unfortunately, is we have, predominantly white communities that sometimes feel like, hey, that's not my history. Why does it matter? Right. And then what happens is those same communities end up getting integrated. And what happens is some of the ignorance or lack of history and lack of context and lack of respect for people of the past starts coming out that way. So you'll have kids, you might have, just give me an example, you might have two white kids that are calling a black kid, the N-word or something like that. And, oh, how'd that happen? Well, the reason why that happened is because that same group of kids was not introduced to African-American heroes, was not introduced to the history of Africa and the many things that, the many teachings and scholarly ideals that came out of Africa. So as a result, when they see Black people, they just associate them with what they see on TV, which is negative criminals and X, Y, and Z and whatever. So I think that the history needs to be taught to all students. And I think a movie like this is perfect for that because it really captures it. And it goes from like I said, even showing him from grade school up until the time when he passed away, and his legacy continues today. So yeah, absolutely. Definitely should. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to make that happen.
I just thinking about, you've brought up the image of him in grade school twice, and I think that must stick out because of the ages that you teach.
Sure.
But it's got to be fascinating to look at the student body that you have and think about pictures of, who is going to become the next leader and the next figurehead for a movement like this. And to have tools like this to engage that conversation is wonderful.
Absolutely. And yeah, I agree 100%. And I think it has to do with being able to attach yourself to something you identify with. So, for a young lady who's watching the John Lewis story, she might not only be motivated by his story, she may be motivated by people in the picture, people that are talking, people that look like her. And it's just a motivational thing. And I think seeing those role models and having those images for our children is extremely important. And he's, obviously definitely made a major impact.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
I would encourage anyone else who's watching to please share any comments that you have. This conversation does not have to be limited to those of us speaking. We can definitely chat within the chat feed here. Thank you for sharing your stories and thoughts in the chat feed. I guess one other question, obviously there have been some incredible movies about civil rights heroes, the Selma film by Ava DuVernay a couple years ago. Who else do you think needs to have a movie made? Who else should we be celebrating? And I guess, Leroy, would you want to teach in school, or if the Ambler Theater had the opportunity to pick, if you could program the Ambler Theater and say, here's the movie that you need to play, and they'll make it for you, what movie would that be?
Sure. A couple people that come to mind is W.E.B. Du Bois is one of them. I would say I would love to see. I don't even know enough right now today about Shirley Chisholm and the fact that she was the first African-American woman to run for president of the United States of America, and for the fact that she, put herself out there and decided that she, really thought that was going to be the best thing. And, who knows how many trails she blazed just by putting herself out there. Another person I would say is Ida B. Wells. As I get to more familiar, just growing up and just proactively doing more research myself, the stories are phenomenal. The fact that they persevered, and it's unconscionable to understand how they could persevere at those times when we experienced racism. Everybody on here has experienced racism, meaning seen it or it's been around, right? But for it to be as flagrant as signs, to be as flagrant as people being hung from trees, and for you to still decide, no, you know what, we are going to have a Black Wall Street. That would be a one, Black Wall Street. Have one about Tulsa, Oklahoma. Am I correct there? Yeah, Black Wall Street. So have one on that, to see that Black people during that time when they were literally being lynched, literally, being told stay in this area, don't go any further. They said, okay, we'll just have our own doctors, have our own pharmacies, have our own banks, have our own veterinarians. So that was such an empowering time. I think an image like that, I would say that probably wins out of all of them. Now that I've talked myself into it, a Black Wall Street film or a play would be phenomenal, because once again, there was a movie a way long time ago by John Travolta with John Travolta, and it was called White Man's Burden. I don't know if anyone remembers that, but it was kind of reverse roles. And I think just seeing those images was like really shell shocking. And I think at this point in our society, people are ready to see alternatives to what's going on right now. People are ready to see, like, okay, well, what would it look like? Let's play around. What would it look like if you just had, a whole bunch of, senators and whatever of color, not necessarily African American, but just of color, just different, including the LGBTQ community. I think people are open to see what that looks like, because you have to start visual. I think Hollywood sometimes predicts the future. I don't know how deep it is as far as they knowing or not, but I think sometimes those images come to life. So I think, Ambler Theater, if it was any of those productions, I think would be very beneficial to the community.
So I don't think, at least I've never seen a movie that is about Carter G. Woodson. He is, as they say, the grandfather, the father of Black history here in America. We learn about him. We learn about our history, but it always, it's interesting from in my perspective, because I learned about Carter G. Woodson, I learned about the W.D. Bois, but that was all in college. In high school, there was never a discussion about, what is Black history and how it evolved, who was the originator of it. To be able to see something like that would be incredible. And again, it's interesting to me because right now we are in a time where I feel like white America is saying, oh, there's Black people in America and they've been done wrong. And now we're getting, corporations and really, popular people that are really putting a focus on us. Well, let's not just focus now, but let's take it back and say, okay, listen, this is our story. This is where we've come from. This is what it's been like since we've come over on the slave ship. And it's so funny because some people really want to always say, oh, that was so long ago, but it really wasn't that long ago when you look at the timeline. And as I said, to be able to, to be able to put out a movie of Black history, but basically of Carter G. Woodson, who actually he wrote the book Miseducation of the Negro, and it would be just a great discussion, because it seems like if people really are going to be open and they want to be open and involved in a discussion about African Americans and our history, it now is the time. We can't let up. I think it's a great opportunity right now for us to be able to have the conversation and to tell our full picture. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of our fears, or one of my fears is, and I'm not fear driven, but one of my small fears is that there's this window of opportunity right now where people are open. Sports teams are painting, Black Lives Matter on the field, and on the court, on the back of the jerseys, they got names. You got corporate sponsors are having, kind of like diversity and endorsing commercials, so hopefully that never changes. But right now, there seems to be an openness due to that. It comes down to seeing a live lynching. That's what I really think it was. It was a live lynching. And as a result, people saw like, oh, that's what you guys go through. It's like, yeah, what? Like, this is what we've been telling you, this is what we've gone through. But I want to say also, though, I feel like it's part of white America. There's another part of white America that has been side by side with us in the struggle for a long time. You know what I mean? So I think there's just another group that's now finally like, this is what Bob was talking about. It's like, yeah, Bob's telling you about that a long time ago. And now you're finally seeing it for yourself. So, you're a little more open for changing some of those systems that are possibly not being treated equally across the land.
And one thing also, and Chris, just let us know.
Yeah, we have another question that just came through.
Okay.
Yeah. So two questions. The first is, do you feel that the younger generation of African Americans are embarrassed by our history? And then a follow-up question about Leroy's school. I think this person might have joined a little late, asking what grades you teach. And I think you mentioned that you were K through 8. Is that correct?
Yeah. Sorry, I was on mute. Yes. Yeah. K to 8 principal. Yes. School district affiliate.
All right. So then the question to both of you, do you feel the younger generation of African Americans are embarrassed by our history?
So you're speaking of, like late teens to late 20s. I mean, to me, so first of all, I have three kids, 21, 25, 26, and I've got younger nieces and nephews. And I think it depends on the upbringing, because what you need to instill in every Black child that lives in America is confidence, and to have a strong belief in who they are. Um, Today, I think the as we call them, the millennials, the young ones, they're speaking out. I think they recognize what's going on. I think sometimes we don't appreciate the fact that they are knowledgeable and they know the history. But in my mind, and from what I see just within my family, I feel like they are very much aware, very much appreciative of what has taken place in our history. But I think they feel like we need to do something a little different to keep the momentum going.
Yeah,
What
absolutely.
that is, is on them, I think.
Absolutely. So I agree with that. I mean, well, I'll say this. I don't think holistically our children are ashamed of our history. I think there is, unfortunately, some there is a kind of a foundation that's been built for that to occur, though. I'll say that I think Black culture is so thick that in my, from my experience as a Black man in America, I am biracial, but I'm a Black man in America. Black people are proud of them, of their culture. They're proud to be Black, even if it comes with the trials and tribulations that are unfortunately put in front of us, and obstacles that are put in front of us. For the most part, people, if you ever ask like Black people, say, oh, would you want to be something else? Like, no, the answer is no. The answer is no. But I would like my conditions to change, but I will say that there is, unfortunately, been some groundwork laid for that to happen, for them to not be as proud as they should be of their ancestors and of the people that came before them, simply because the education system has totally changed their focus from just civics and social studies and things like that. Not that I was ever really taught in the right way in the first place, but to math and reading. And if math and reading is the focus, then social studies is no longer going to be something that is always going to be embedded in the curriculum and talked about. And it's definitely not going to be the teacher's focus, because they're on the hook for their math and reading grades, right? So there is a saying that has come out, in the last couple of years, that I totally just don't like at all, which is, we are not our ancestors. And when people are saying that, they're trying to imply as though the ancestors laid down, or the ancestors just accepted slavery, like Kanye West said, or that was a decision. And I think there's unfortunately is a small minority of the culture that feels like, hey, yeah, I'm not going to take it the way they took it, not understanding that they had to take some of that. They had to put, they sacrificed their lives to get us where we were. If they didn't put themselves out there, if Congressman Lewis did not stand on the John Pettus Bridge and take those blows and let those images be seen by other people in the world, which forced the hand of the system to change, because that's what it was. The reason why in my opinion, the reason why the civil rights movement was so successful is because those images started being shown around the world, and it started actually being a topic at the United Nations. Right? Like the discrimination that was going on in America started being a discussion around the world. And those images of people being hosed down, those images of people being bitten by dogs, those things change people's hearts, because if you see that, a lot of people, I know we have a current leader that does not have empathy, but a lot of people do have empathy, because that is a natural human trait. It's odd to not have that trait, right? So when people see that, they identify with that. And I think that, ultimately some of our kids might see that and say, oh, I'd have fought so-and-so back, and I'd have fought so-and-so back, not understanding that at that time, that was the chess move. That was what needed to be done. And they calculated it and they executed it, and it worked. So, I say yes and no to that. I think there needs to be some consciousness around the fact that there is possibility that could start taking hold if we don't make sure we prop up our African American leaders and leaders from the African diaspora for our students, our children. Period.
Something that I wanted to say is that, with respect to the youth, they have the views of Martin Luther King, right? They have, because, he's the one that's talked about in school. They speak about Jesse Jackson. But the one thing that I was going to say is, with respect to John Lewis, you have him moving in this very nonviolent manner, peaceful, right? Strong, moving forward. And as SNCC, which is the organization that he was in, right? Stokely Carmichael became, the head of SNCC, who was a bit different, right? So my question, I'm just kind of wondering, if we pose the two men, to the youth of today, the Stokely Carmichael, who was more of the Black Panther, who kind of brought the Black Panther movement into the SNCC organization. Would they prefer, almost like what you're saying, Leroy? You think they would prefer the Stokely Carmichael view of things, or and not the fact that he was completely violent, because what he did was he brought the economics, the financial issues,
community programming.
He brought he basically said that he didn't think we would reach our goal through just one love, right? That in America, we needed to cover several complex bases in order for us to have equality and justice. And so that was his view, and that was definitely part of the Black Panthers. But on the other hand, John Lewis, as a minister, was more of the Martin Luther King style. To our kids today, if we pose the question, who do you view as the hero of the 60s? I mean, which would you prefer to see? And and as I did read an article where it said that if we actually kept the Stokely Carmichael view of things, that maybe we would have achieved more than we did, as opposed to with John Lewis, because Stokely did, as I said, he really wanted to include, the economics, the politics, the urban issues associated with African Americans. So, I mean, it's just an interesting, polarization of the two men, and looking at it as a young person today, would they be cheering on John Lewis, or would they be cheering on, like the Stokely Carmichael? So.
Right. So I think, my personal opinion would be they're both always going to be relevant. I think kids nowadays would still and this is kind of a problem / good thing, but I mean, the good thing is that they would, want to be, they look to a figure like a Martin Luther King, like a Dr. Martin Luther King, like a Representative John Lewis. The unfortunate side of that is they're so familiar with Martin Luther King because that's what they've been taught every day, all day, it's Martin Luther King, Martin Luther King. So if you just gave a poll, people would still say Martin Luther King. That's because they have not been exposed to Stokely Carmichael, right? But I think there's still going to be Stokely Carmichael fans. I'm a huge Stokely Carmichael fan, and I think we need that. I think you need that element. You need the Malcolm X element. If people feel like they're going to run over everybody, then they're just going to, there's going to be a certain level they take it with that group of people, and they'll know there's never backlash. Like there's never, some big person who's going to stand up and say, or a short person, whatever, and say like, nah, you're not doing that today, buddy. Like, so I think the fact that the Black Panthers were there patrolling the police and things like that, that was a needed element just to show listen, we are very intelligent. Yes. We're peaceful people. Yes. But we're not monolithic either. Like, please don't get too comfortable. Like, we're not monolithic. So if you feel like this big, that Proud Boys thing, like there's no black Proud Boys out there. There are black Proud Boys, and they can mobilize too, but we don't want to get into that. The point of the story is, don't get too comfortable. That's all I'm saying.
There are no other comments on the thread, and I really thank you both for your candor and for this conversation. It's been really interesting. I did want to just ask you, as you're both chairs for the Ambler branch of the NAACP, if you could speak just a little bit about any upcoming programming or events that the organization has planned, or anything that everyone should know about.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the education in October, I want to say it's October 23rd. It's coming up. We'll be posting the flyer on all of our Facebook groups. We're going to have basically a panel discussion about part 2 of our state of education for Black America. And what we did for part 1 was we had multiple, people from the education world, whether it's professors or actual classroom teachers, some people that do training. Special education will be one of the things that we're going to highlight this next conversation. So just having an opportunity for audience members to just ask questions. We have prepared questions, of course, of our panelists, and then we're going to also open it up for the audience just so they can talk to us as well. But we're going to continue to build on that conversation, and we'll continue to work throughout 2020.
And the one thing that I want to say, as being the chair for the committee, the membership chair, I wanted to make a point to our white audience out there. For this whole John Lewis event, I had a couple people who said to me, "Can white people join the NAACP?" And I said, "Oh, definitely white people can join the NAACP." I believe, if I'm correct, there was one white person who actually was part of
co-founding.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, they were involved. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, during this time, again, I can't say that, enough, is that we need as many people that are willing to take a chance and be on our side to recognize the struggles that we have had in America. And the NAACP is open, white, Black, as long as you are willing to come in and to recognize the fight, please, by all means, join, because this is what we need in America. This is what we need. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
If anyone is interested in joining and wants more information, where should they look?
Yeah, so you can basically go to the NAACP website, the general NAACP website. And what I'll say is this, is that if you are an Ambler, when you go to membership, you put in the Ambler zip code. So 19002, and that takes you straight to the Ambler branch NAACP. You will actually, I believe it's $30 for an annual fee. You actually get, I think, a quarterly issue of The Crisis, which is one of the magazines that comes out. And it's very simple. So you hit the area that you're in, your zip code, our zip code, Ambler, is 19002. Or even if you're in another area, but you want to join the NAACP in your town, you have to put in your zip code, and it will connect you to your branch. So, join, be involved. We need, we need this.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I could just add to that, I think civil rights is something that should concern everybody, and it always has, right? Because as they say, civil rights violations anywhere. Here it can be anywhere, or when you see people basically being abused, you don't know if that's going to be you next. And if you start seeing people getting their civil rights violated, understand that that's just one subgroup that's been targeted, but there's other subgroups. You know what I mean? So if people want to say like, oh, okay, today it's African Americans and tomorrow it's Mexicans, and today then it's back to like, well, what about females? We want them to be a certain role in the society, and then it's like, oh, okay, well, people that are a certain weight, like you don't know when that ends. So ultimately, when you see injustice, and John Lewis said that, he said when you see something, he said you only pass this way once, and you have to give it everything you got. And he also said, and I'm paraphrasing here, he said, when you see injustice, do something about it. So I think that's what we're asking. It's like everybody to get on board, because, this benefits everybody.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Chris, I want to thank you for allowing us to have this forum, and hopefully we can continue to do something like this. I think it really is an important event to take place. I know you have other movies that are coming through the Ambler Theater, which focus on African Americans. Some of the I have to look at them. I know some of them are African American directors that seem to be really interesting movies. So we'll take a look and we'll see if we can continue to do something like this as well. But I want to thank you from the Ambler NAACP.
Thank you, Stephanie, and thank you for putting this event together. Leroy, it was great to meet you, and thank you for all of your thoughts today. Absolutely. I really hope that, we can take more questions. Yes, someone just asked. Yes. Let me just say yes right here on the chat. Yes. Fire away. But yes, we do really hope to have more events. That this is the first of what we see as many of events in the future. And for those of you watching, we are experimenting with the formats of these. We weren't sure how many people were going to join. I'm not sure if a Zoom conversation is best, or if this YouTube feed would be best. But yeah, maybe it's possible that we can create a discussion group around some of the films that we have at the theater or otherwise. But the Ambler Theater is definitely committed to pushing forward and making sure that we continue this conversation. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The conversation that just come through, and maybe this is a wonderful way, this sounds like a great way to end on a positive note, but what suggestions do you have for people and youth to get into good trouble and not just be frustrated? So how do we engage in good trouble in John Lewis's definition of it, and not just be frustrated?
Well, to me, for me, it's in my family, it's through the arts. And through the arts, I think you can always illustrate, you can always focus and promote good trouble in a good way that people actually can appreciate. And with whatever it is, if it's music, if it's painting, if it's poetry, if it's I feel like the youth today really could actually use those platforms as a way. I mean, as a way of basically sharing their opinions and being able to be vocal with respect to good trouble. So I feel like through the arts is a really good format. So
absolutely. And I would say, in my opinion, all politics are local. So ultimately, use your voice at whatever level you're at. So if you're a young kid and you feel like, hey, I want there to be, whole milk at lunch. They're only having 2% milk. I don't really like 2% milk. Okay, well, if there's a student council, join the student council. Mm-hmm. If you feel like, hey, we don't have any playground equipment. My cousin has playground equipment. I don't have any playground equipment. Okay, write a letter to the principal. Use your voice. There's things that are in your control. There's things that are out of your control. And ultimately, we know in this society, there's a lot of things in your control, because you just have to get some people around you that feel the same way. And if you mobilize in that way, and just like John Lewis said, organize, mobilize, and then legislate, there's a way for you to get involved at any level. YMCA, you feel like the hoops are too old or they need new nets. Okay, get a group of kids, 5 kids. All your parents are going to write the letters, and you're going to hand deliver them. And anything can be changed in our society. We've seen that throughout history. And a lot of it has to do with people just using their voice, and understanding that it's a very powerful tool. And study, if you just look at history, you'll see examples of young kids, older people using their voice and standing up and creating the change that they want to see. So, just feel confident that you can do the same thing. And that's anything. Like I said, if you want to have pretzels at lunch and they have never had pretzels at lunch at your school, you need to bring that up.
Hmm. And it looks like to me that the kids nowadays, they're independent. They have this strength that, you know, when I was younger, we just followed I'm gonna go to college, I'm gonna get a 9 to 5. Where I feel like the younger generation now, they're very much independent, and if they actually do things as Leroy said. I mean, they start businesses, they start their own, you know, um, ways of being able to get resources out there, whether if it's online or if it's actually a true commodity. I'm just saying that I feel like the youth today have so many different ways of getting out and reaching out to the world and literally to the world because of the world that we're in right now and our abilities. There's so much that I think it's almost limitless that they can actually do a lot. Um, and then there's no fear. I feel like there's no fear. They
Since
don't feel
you're,
like they have to be kept in a box. Get out
sorry,
there and do it.
since you're both not on the chat and I'm sharing that with you, I just wanted to let you know that the person who posed that question said great advice from both of you and thanked you. There is a question to Leroy
Sure.
asking, what has your school district done to help the young Black male to avoid the school to prison pipeline?
Great. Great question. I think the first thing our school district school district of Philadelphia, it has a strong focus on the most important thing when it comes to the school and prison pipelines, data wise, which is literacy rates. So from a very young age, we have, focus on early childhood learning. As a lot of people have stated, studies show that, 4th grade reading scores are used to determine the number of jail beds that are prison beds that are created and space that is expanded upon and stuff like that. So first thing is just having a strong focus on early literacy. Second thing is just exposing kids to options that they should have in the future. So there's a college program called Naviance. At my school, we have Naviance, which is a great program. It really lets students get more familiar with their own interests. So you might, take a survey and find out, hey, I really like math. Maybe I'll be an engineer. Maybe I'll be a scientist. Maybe I want to be an astronaut. Who knows? And then you can start doing things. And this year, it's even more impressive where students are engaged in Naviance. And it's not at my school because I only go up to 8th grade, but 11th graders, seniors, even high school students are starting to get information about, well, I guess, sorry, it doesn't happen in my school, 8th grade. They're starting to get information about what high schools they should apply to based on their interests. So for instance, some of our high schools are, STEM high schools and, really strong on the science side. We have performing arts schools that people want to do that. So it's like getting students interest, letting them understand the value of education and how you can, be passionate about your interest and be educated at the same time, making sure that they know their options and how you can have fun doing that. And like I said, just continue to just have strong academics. So, STEM, making sure that they're exposed to STEM. And like I said, a major thing, and this is from my time as an assistant principal at an African centered school in Philadelphia. One of the things that was taught to me at that, during that experience was the power of logos and the power of images and just letting students see positive images of people that look like them, positive people in positions that they can identify with and say, wow, making sure that you have Black male teachers, making sure you're making a concerted effort to have staff members of color. So those are some of the things that we've been working on. But, I think that we continue and we have not solved, obviously, the achievement gap, but we're still working on it.
And again, just sharing. Thank you for your response. That was very helpful.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you.
Just looking, it's been almost about an hour. I really, this conversation has flown and has been so wide ranging. I really do hope again that this can be the first of many of these events that we can do together. And I look forward to discussing other films with both of you and other members of your committees and hopefully of the public. Thank you all to those who joined on YouTube. And again, thank you, Stephanie, for organizing this, and Leroy for your help.
Thank you. This was great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Good
Thank
night,
you,
everyone.
Leroy.
Thank you.
All righty. Good night.